number one on the agenda for world leaders as they meet today and, of course, tomorrow.
OK, Marianne, more from you a little bit later, but from now, thank you. A teenage girl who filmed the murder of George Floyd has been awarded a special citation in this year's Pulitzer Prizes. Darnella, Frazier's film spurred protests for racial justice around the world after it went viral in May last year. She was recognised for her courage and for highlighting the role that ordinary people have to play in journalists' quest for truth. I'm joined now by Sonora Jha, Professor of Journalism at Seattle University. Professor, welcome to you. Thanks very much for being with us. What do you make of this special citation for this young lady?
I think it's excellent. In fact, I went back to my Twitter on April 22nd after everything was announced, and I tweeted about how she should get the Pulitzer, and not really hopeful that she would. But I'm glad that she has it. It's a good day for citizen journalism. It's a good day for communities that have basically been disadvantaged, marginalized from the mainstream media, even though, of course, she didn't, she wasn't thinking of it as journalism, but it's important citizen journalism.
Yeah, what does it say about the role of traditional journalists, given that police brutality against ethnic minorities in America is certainly nothing new, but it took this awful incident and this footage to go viral to really highlight the issue?
I research how journalists cover social movements, how they cover communities, and it's appalling that over decades, journalists still rely on authoritative sources. They rely on those in power, and the people who are in power then get to set the agenda. They get to set, what people are talking about, what the headlines are going to be. And I think this kind of journalism, because it comes from the bottom up, turns that around. It sort of bypasses the gatekeeping function of mainstream media and disrupts the agenda and goes through and says, no, this is what we need to pay attention to. And I think because of cell phone cameras now documenting something that has been happening for so long, for decades, Black people have been killed in the streets by police, and police violence has continued. It's finally coming to mainstream media. Now, journalists are forced to cover it because the evidence is out there and is uploaded, and mainstream media has been bypassed in a way.
And what do you think this says about a possible shift in power between traditional journalism and the likes of this, citizen journalism? Are we going to see more of that, and is it going to play a more and more important role in journalism?
I think it is going to play an important role, but it's really important to keep in mind that Ms. Darnella Frazier didn't want to be a journalist. She didn't walk down the street that day saying, let me do good journalism. In fact, when she raises her camera and starts documenting what's going on, she's also trying to make it a deterrent to Derek Chauvin killing George Floyd. And that's really important to remember, that often this citizen journalism is not looking to be journalism or to get a Pulitzer. In fact, Darnella Frazier doesn't need the Pulitzer. She needs to stay alive. The Pulitzer needs Darnella Frazier. The Pulitzer journalism needs Darnella Frazier. And so it's really important to hand this over to journalists and say, now do your journalism, do your stories, and do them well. Find out why this structural violence continues. Find out why marginalization continues, why racism still continues in America, and shift that. So it should be sort of a spark for journalists to do their work better and to let Darnellas lead their lives more safely. She feels endangered right now. Her family is not feeling safe. So, she doesn't need the Pulitzer. The Pulitzer needs her.
OK, Professor Sonora Jha, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's bring you some of the day's other news now. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has said relations between Moscow and the United States are at their lowest point in years. He was speaking to the American network NBC News ahead of his meeting with Joe Biden next week. Mr. Putin brushed off questions about being described as a killer by his US counterpart, dismissing the label as Hollywood macho. The The US Justice Department has begun an investigation into reports that officials in the Trump administration forced Apple to hand over phone records of leading Democrats and journalists. The department's Inspector General said it would review the use of subpoenas to the tech giant. They were issued as President Trump tried to find the source of leaks about contacts between his associates and Russia. The leading Hong Kong pro-democracy campaigner Agnes Chow has been released from prison after serving 7 months